Everything you've been told about getting rich involves more effort, more moves, more hustle. So here's what makes no sense. The wealthiest people I've studied are the ones who do less on purpose. They ignore, they wait, they refuse. 7 habits that look like pure laziness from the outside are the exact reason their money quietly compounds while yours leaks away. I want you to picture 2 people, same job, same salary, let's say $71,000, which lands right around the U.S. median household income the Census Bureau has been tracking. Same city, same rent, same age. One of them is exhausted. He's on his 3rd budgeting app this year. He picked up weekend delivery shifts. He reads the market news every morning and moves his money around when something spooks him. He is trying. The other one seems half checked out. She set something up years ago and mostly forgot about it. She doesn't watch the market. She turned down a great opportunity her coworker swore by. From the outside, he's the striver and she's the coaster. 15 years later she has a paid-off car, a fully funded retirement account, and a calm that money bought her. He has a newer phone and a familiar knot in his stomach. Same inputs, opposite outcomes, and the difference has almost nothing to do with effort. That's the part one need you to sit with, because it runs against everything we've absorbed. We were handed a story that wealth is a reward for intensity, that the harder you grind, the richer you get. But money doesn't actually respond to intensity. It responds to time and consistency, and those 2 things often look, from the outside, exactly like laziness. The striver is busy, the builder is patient, and patience is the one thing our whole economy is engineered to sell you out of. Stay with me, because the reason this works isn't willpower, it's structure. Each of these 7 habits removes a decision instead of adding one. And every decision you remove is a leak you seal. Let me show you the first one. The first habit is doing nothing when the market drops. That sounds reckless. It's the opposite. There's a piece of data from Fidelity that gets passed around in financial circles, and even in its softened, we can't prove the exact account's form, the shape of it is real. The portfolios that performed best over long stretches often belonged to people who had forgotten they had accounts at all. No logins, no adjustments, no panic selling in March, no greedy buying in December. Just money left alone to do the one thing money does well when undisturbed, grow on itself. Here's the reasoning underneath it. Every time you sell in a downturn, you convert a temporary paper loss into a permanent real one. And then you have to be right twice, right about when to get out, and right about when to get back in. Almost nobody is right twice. There's a well-documented gap that firms like Morningstar and Dalbar have measured for years between what investments return and what investors actually earn. And that gap is behavior. It's the cost of flinching. People underperform the very funds they own because they can't sit still. Consider a man named Elias, 51, an HVAC technician, never made more than $68,000 in a year. He started putting $400 a month into a plain total market index fund at 29 and did something radical. Nothing. He didn't check it during 2008. He didn't check it during 2020. He told me he didn't want to know during the scary years because knowing made him want to act. At roughly 8% average annual growth, $400 a month compounding for 22 years lands him near $290,000. And he barely lifted a finger to build it. His neighbor, an accountant who earned nearly double, traded actively the whole time, chasing what looked smart. The neighbor has less. Elias's superpower was his refusal to participate in his own sabotage. Read that again slowly. The skill wasn't picking. The skill was not touching. The second habit is automating your savings so you never see the money and never make the choice. This looks lazy because it removes you from the process entirely. And that's precisely the point. Behavioral economists have a name for why this works. It exploits the fact that we save whatever's left over. And there is never anything left over. Leftover saving is a myth the entire consumer economy depends on. But when the money moves before it ever touches your checking account, before your brain even registers it as spendable, the saving happens in the one place willpower can't be ambushed. The mechanism here is called paying yourself first, and it isn't a slogan, it's a sequencing fix. It has almost nothing to do with discipline. It's a sequencing problem, and sequencing problems are invisible until someone points them out. Most people budget like this. Income comes in, expenses go out, and savings gets whatever survives. Flip the order, savings comes out the instant income lands, and expenses fit into what remains, and your saving rate stops depending on how strong you feel that month. Think about a woman named Priya, a dental hygienist, 34. She told me for years she wasn't a saver, like it was a personality trait she'd been born without. Then she said an automatic transfer of $500 the day after each paycheck hit, routed straight into a high-yield savings account earning around 4%, which, in 2026, is genuinely available and paying real interest. unlike the near-zero accounts of a decade ago. 18 months later she had over $9,000 and swore the money appeared out of nowhere. It didn't. She just moved the decision to a place where her willpower never had to show up for work. That's the trick. You don't beat temptation. You schedule it out of the room. Now watch what that does when you stretch it across time. Take that same $500 a month, but instead of savings, route it into low-cost index investing at roughly 7 to 8% over 30 years. That's not $180,000 of contribution sitting there. That's somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000 to $680,000. The gap between what you put in and what you pull out, that gap is the entire game. And it's built by a transfer you set up once and then ignored. The person who did nothing did the most important thing. The third habit is refusing to upgrade your life every time your income rises. This is the quiet one, the one almost nobody can fake, and it looks like laziness because it looks like a lack of ambition. It's actually the opposite of a lack. It's a refusal. There's a phenomenon economists call lifestyle inflation, or the hedonic treadmill, and it's the single most efficient wealth destroyer aimed at high earners. Here's how it works. You get a raise, your spending rises to meet it, and within a few months the new normal feels exactly as tight as the old one. You ran. The ground moved. You're standing in the same place, just with a nicer car in the driveway. The reasoning is almost cruel in its simplicity. Your savings rate, not your income, determines when you become financially free. A person earning $200,000 who spends $195,000 is more fragile than a person earning $70,000 who spends $50,000. One of them is one bad quarter from panic. The other one already bought their freedom, quietly, by not spending the raise. This is why you meet millionaires driving 10-year-old Toyotas, and you meet people drowning in debt behind the wheel of a leased luxury SUV. The car tells you nothing about the wealth. Often it tells you the opposite. Meet Marcus, 42, a regional sales manager whose income climbed from $60,000 to $140,000 across a decade. Every time he got a raise, he did something his coworkers thought was insane. He kept living on the old number and automated the entire difference into investments. When his pay jumped $20,000, his lifestyle didn't move an inch. The raise went straight past his life and into his future. His colleagues, on identical trajectories, upgraded apartments, cars, watches. Today they earn what he earns and own almost nothing. Marcus is on track to stop working at 52 if he wants to. He looks, to everyone around him, like a guy who never quite leveled up. He leveled up in the only column that compounds. The gap does all the work. The fourth habit is ignoring the financial news entirely. Not skimming it, ignoring it. This feels irresponsible, like you're supposed to stay informed. But here's what the information economy won't tell you. Financial media is not built to make you wealthy. It's built to keep you watching, and nothing keeps you watching like fear and urgency. Every market plunges headline, every is now the time to sell segment, is engineered to make you act, because your action is the product. Calm doesn't sell ads. Panic does. The person who reads it all and does. The person who reads it all and does nothing with it is fine. The danger is the person who reads it all and responds. Studies of trading behavior, the kind Barber and Odin at UC Berkeley became known for, kept finding the same uncomfortable pattern. The more actively people traded, the worse they did. And the households that traded most aggressively underperformed the ones that barely traded at all. The information didn't help them. It gave them more reasons to touch the thing they should have left alone. Take a woman named Dana, 38, a nurse who got into investing during a boom and made herself into a full-time watcher. She followed the shows, the alerts, the smart money accounts. Every headline was a nudge. Trim here, jump in there. Over 4 years of frantic attention she trailed the plain index her sister owned, and her sister could not have told you what the market did that week. Dana worked harder at her money than almost anyone I know and earned less for it. The day she muted the feeds and set everything on autopilot, her returns went up and her sleep came back. The effort had been the problem the whole time. Mute the feed. It is doing more to your net worth than you think. The fifth habit is keeping your money boring. 1 or 2 simple, low-cost index funds instead of a clever, complicated portfolio. This looks lazy because everyone assumes sophistication equals results. It doesn't. Here's the reasoning, and it's backed by decades of data. The vast majority of actively managed funds, the expensive, smart, professionally run ones, fail to beat a plain index over long stretches. The regular S&P scorecards that track this have shown, year after year, that once you stretch the window past 10 or 15 years, something like 8 or 9 out of 10 active funds lose to the boring benchmark. You're paying a premium for underperformance. The simple thing wins not despite being simple, but because being simple costs almost nothing, And cost is the one variable you fully control. Every dollar you pay in fees is a dollar that never compounds. Watch what that does. A fund charging 1% a year versus one charging 0.05% sounds trivial, a rounding error. But run $100,000 across 30 years at 7%. And that fee difference quietly eats somewhere around $150,000 to $170,000 of your final balance. Nobody sends you a bill. It just never shows up in your account. The expensive, exciting portfolio charged you a house down payment for the privilege of doing worse than the fund you could have bought and ignored. Consider Tomas, 47. An engineer who was sure his intelligence should translate into a clever portfolio. He owned 14 funds, rebalanced constantly, paid for a manager, felt sophisticated. His brother-in-law owned exactly one total market fund and a bond fund and never thought about it. Over 12 years the brother-in-law came out ahead, after fees, after taxes, after all of Tomas's effort. Tomas told me the hardest thing he ever did financially was admit that his cleverness was costing him money. He sold the complexity, bought the boring, and his returns improved the moment he stopped trying to be smart. Boring is not the compromise. Boring is the edge. If this is landing, take a second and subscribe. This channel breaks down the real numbers behind wealth every week. No hype, no panic. Now, the next part is where it separates the people who talk about money from the ones who quietly build it. The sixth habit is waiting, deliberately, on purpose, long past the point where waiting feels like doing nothing. There's a concept behind this that most people never get taught, and once you see it you can't unsee it. Compounding is not linear, it's exponential, which means almost all of the reward arrives at the very end. For the first decade it feels like nothing is happening. The curve is nearly flat. This is exactly when most people quit, because flat feels like failure. But the money isn't failing, it's loading. Here's the math that proves the patience. Two savers, both putting away the same $300 a month at 8%. The first starts at 25 and stops contributing entirely at 35, just 10 years. Then never adds another dollar, only waits. The second starts at 35 and contributes faithfully for 30 straight years, all the way to 65. The one who invested for 10 years and quit ends up with more than the one who invested for 30. Read that again. 10 years of early money beat 30 years of late money, because the early dollars had decades to compound and the late dollars didn't. Time in the market isn't a factor. It's the factor. The person who looked lazy, who only saved for a decade and then coasted, out-earned the person who worked at it 3 times longer. This is why the single most valuable financial move available to a 25-year-old is not a hot pit or a side hustle. It's starting a boring automatic transfer and then having the patience to let a flat, unexciting decade go by without touching it. The waiting is the work. It just doesn't look like work, which is why so few people can do it. The seventh habit is the quietest of all, asking one honest question before spending money, and then usually walking away. Not budgeting every latte, that's exhausting and it misses the point. The lazy version is better. You simply pause on the big stuff and ask, is this the thing I actually want, or the thing I was sold? Most lifestyle spending, the upgrade, the impulse, the thing that photographs well, doesn't survive that one question. And the person who asks it looks passive, indecisive, like they're missing out. They're not missing out. They're opting out. Here's the reframe that makes it real. That $6 daily habit you don't think about, the coffee, the subscription stack, the small automatic pleasures, isn't competing with a cheaper coffee. It's competing with your freedom. $6 a day is about $180 a month. Invested at 7 to 8% over 30 years. That's not $65,000 of contributions. It's north of $200,000. I'm not telling you to give up coffee. I'm telling you that when you spend, you should know what you're actually spending. Not the price tag, but the future dollars that price tag quietly cancels. Once you can see that trade, you make different choices without anyone forcing you. Awareness does what willpower can't. So here's the reframe I promised you at the start. Go back to those two people, the exhausted striver and the calm coaster. Everything he did looked like winning. The hustle, the moves, the attention, the upgrades. Everything she did looked like losing. The ignoring, the waiting, the refusing, the boring fun she forgot about. But once you see the machinery underneath, it inverts completely. His activity was leaking his wealth. Her stillness was building it. The habits that looked lazy weren't the absence of effort. They were effort aimed at the one thing that actually pays, leaving good decisions alone long enough to work. The people who look rich are often just spending fast. The people who look plain are often just compounding quietly. Once you can tell the difference, you stop envying the wrong ones. And the beautiful part is how simple the actual moves are, because none of this requires intensity. Automate one transfer the day your pay lands. so saving stops depending on how you feel. Buy 1 or 2 low-cost index funds and refuse to touch them. Mute the financial feeds that profit from your panic. Park your cash in a high-yield savings account that actually pays you in 2026 instead of a big bank account that pays you nothing. And before any large purchase, ask the one honest question, the thing I want, or the thing I was sold, and let most of them fail it. That's it. It's not a grind. It's a handful of decisions you make once and then stop making. Trajectory matters more than where you're standing today. A person moving slowly in the right direction beats a person sprinting in circles. If this reframed how you see it, the video to watch next is the one on building your financial foundation from zero, the order to do things in, so the compounding actually has something to compound. It's the groundwork under everything I just said. So picture those two people one more time. The striver, still busy, still moving money around, still tired, still convinced the answer is more. And the one who looks like she's barely trying, who ignored the news, forgot her accounts, drove the boring car, and let the boring fun sit. For years you'd have bet on him. Now you know better. She wasn't lazy. She was letting time do the heaviest lifting there is, and quietly refusing to get in its way. The richest thing you can do with money, it turns out, is have the patience to leave it alone. Do less, on purpose. Then let the years make you rich.